welcome, Adam. This is great to have you on board. Now, before we get started, I want to say straight off the bat, if you listen to what Adam's got to say here, he's going to save you six figures. I'm sure of that, just by doing what he says here. So let's go through this all the way to the end, okay? This is going to be fantastic. Okay, so who is Adam? Well, Adam is an amazing person that has built a number of businesses, successful businesses over the time, and he has put together some amazing tools. So let's go straight over. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Okay, can you give us a bit of a rundown of who you are and how you got to this position and why I'm so excited about having you on board today?
Sure, yes. I studied accounting and I started in lending.
Well, that's a good way to start this conversation, by the way. Build up the excitement, and now you've mentioned the accounting word already.
Yeah. Yes. I am an accountant, but I decided not to go into accounting. So I went into small business lending, we started, I ran a small business lending program here in Indiana. One of the things that we were always asking our clients for when they were applying for a loan was financial projections. And they always struggled with building out a financial model. And, they kind of got that deer in the headlights look when we asked for projections, like what? And so I thought, well, maybe we could try to solve that problem and make it easier. And so that I started Projection Hub as kind of a side business while I was still a lender, and with that goal of trying to help people through that projection process. I guess maybe fast forwarding to today, I was a lender for about 12 years. A couple of years ago, kind of stepped out of that role and doing Projection Hub full time. And what we do now is really help people build out financial models for raising capital, whether that's raising money from investors or from lenders. So yeah, that's a little bit about what we do.
Well, that is a bit of an overview, absolutely. But I've looked through your site, I've looked through your templates, and the information that you provide there, and you provide videos on how to use these templates as well, literally takes people step by step through to gathering and getting the information into a format that is attractive to the financiers. That's huge. Now, I talk all the time about taking businesses and making them look good and making them attractive, but you do it from the perspective of going towards the funder.
Right. Yep. Yeah. I think, just being a funder myself for so long, it was like, there were so many times in a loan committee where the loan committee would look at the projections, and that was the thing that killed the deal, because I thought, hey, there was some silly mistake, the balance sheet doesn't balance, or, the income statement's upside down, or, there's just lots of mistakes that folks just don't know. And so our goal is to try to make that as easy as possible through that kind of step-by-step video, help you learn how to fill it out. And we've got a lot of different templates for kind of any industry you might be in, any type of business you might be in. We probably have a template that's a good starting point.
Okay, starting point. Use the terminology there, starting point. Now, I've gone through again, and you have got pretty much every industry covered. I picked some pretty obscure ones, and you've got them covered there. Why did you use the word starting point?
Yeah, well, certainly so maybe I'll kind of step back and share generally about our business. So, we have about 125 different industry-specific projection templates. And so, every month, maybe 200 or 300 people will buy a template, and, they're kind of trying to do that on their own, right? And then some percentage of them will say, hey, I'm doing this medical office, but I have a membership component, and could you build in a membership component for me? And so, now maybe, medical office or our physician office, now we have kind of a concierge option in that template. So we'll build that in, but a lot of times clients will come to us with maybe new or novel things that don't exist in the template. And so they'll reach out, and we'll probably about 50 or so clients a month where we'll work with them on a consulting basis and customize or fill out the model for them. So when I say starting point, it could be many clients every month are kind of using the template as it is, and it's a good fit. But there are situations where you're trying to do something a little bit unique. And the templates are all fully unlocked. So if somebody felt comfortable in Excel, they can get in there and customize it on their own to their heart's content.
Okay. Now, going in there and customizing these templates on their own, how successful has that been for people?
Yeah, sometimes clients will really surprise me. We offer kind of a free projection review. So if you can use our template, fill out your projections, and you want to send it to us and have us just take a look at it, we'll do that and give you a recorded video with some feedback for you for free. And sometimes, I am just blown away by the clients that have just taken our template as a base and then built a whole new aspect to it that we hadn't thought of, that they've built into it, and they've figured it out and really dove into all the equations, and it's working and they didn't break it. So yes, I would say that is possible, but probably more often it's more like clients send something. It's like, hey, this something helped me, and it's like, yeah, you deleted an equation here that you shouldn't have, or something. So there's kind of the downside of making our templates kind of fully unlocked and available for you to make your own. There's an upside that they're fully unlocked and you can do whatever you want, but the downside is you could make a mistake and you might need some help, fixing that. So
Okay. Are these things that people use right now? We're talking about them being used for loan applications. Are they things that they could use them on a regular basis as well? On a week to week, month to month basis?
yeah, we do have a budget to actual template, so it does allow you to kind of create your 5-year budget or 5-year projections, and then you can put in actuals, and then there's some reports or some tabs that kind of then compare those, so you can see how you're doing against budget. I would say I think it works okay, but I think there's also like, if somebody's using a QuickBooks or something, to handle their bookkeeping, I think it tends to be that wherever you're doing your bookkeeping may make sense to kind of you import a budget into that and run those reports. But we have that. It is possible some clients use that, and some clients will ask us to like customize something for them. Again, that's like, hey, I want to build a custom model and then track my ongoing KPIs.
Okay. And are they Excel based? Are they Google based?
Yeah, so we build them all in Excel. So, that's kind of the starting point on our end, but so we'll sell them as an Excel template, but then it's pretty easy to convert that to Google Sheets, and they do well converting to Google Sheets. I will say, numbers, like Apple numbers, sometimes that it seems like Excel and numbers just don't get along, and so if someone's trying to convert to numbers, it's like, so I usually suggest, if you're going to convert to something other than Excel, Google Sheets is probably a good option.
Okay. And how do these go? Okay. We've filled it all out. We've got all the data in there. We go off to the bank or go off to the lender or something like that. What sort of success rates are we looking at? What sort of feedback do we get from them?
Yeah, I mean, I was on a call with a kind of a specialty lender here in the States that works particularly with doctor's office, physicians, dental practices, and they are lenders specifically for that kind of healthcare niche. And they were really excited about our templates and we were working with a client of theirs that was applying for a loan, and the lender and then the underwriter at the bank had a couple questions, reached out to us today. The financial modeler on our team, Rebecca, who was leading that project, hopped on a call with the bank, and was able to kind of talk through. They had a couple of questions about how something was being calculated with salaries, and so we were able to answer that for them, and I think they were thrilled. And so I think from my feedback tends to be like from the underwriter, they, at least once they understand the models, they love them, because it's what they need from a underwriting perspective, and it gives them the information they need and the detail they need. So, we find good success from the lenders in that sense. Now, I would say we don't control what the client would put into the projection. Sometimes, we'll catch.
Sounds like a story coming up here.
Yeah. Sometimes the clients will send us a set of projections to review, and it's like, whoa, you are projecting to grow faster than Google or something. It's like you're gonna have 1 billion users and by year 5, and so I think there are also situations where sometimes clients will put together a set of projections that are just not realistic. And so that's why we always encourage, like, hey, send it to us. We'll review it for free, and give you some feedback before you embarrass yourself with the lender.
Entrepreneurs are funny creatures. They are passionate about what they do and how they see the future. Therefore, the numbers always get an extra 0, 2 zeros, or 3 zeros attached.
Yeah, for sure.
To have a reality check with your firm. Okay, so obvious question. It says so on the background there, Projection Hub. Do you do anything other than projections?
Yeah. So, since I was an SBA lender, Small Business Administration lender for, over a decade, more recently, we have started trying to help people more holistically through the SBA process. Because what I kept running into is clients would maybe send us their projections for review, and I would see, for example, they would have a $3 million SBA loan, and then in the section where it asks for like equity investment, they'd have zero. They'd have no equity investment. Well, I know that any SBA lender is going to require at least a 10%, equity down payment. And so, I'd say, well, hey, do you have $300,000 available to invest into this project? Because that's what you're going to need if you think you're going to, borrow 3 million. And oftentimes it's, oh no, I don't have that. And it's like, oh man, you spent a lot of time working on these projections and this business plan for a scenario that's not really possible or not likely, given your circumstances. And so we've started offering an SBA coaching program where if you are interested in just saying, hey, let's kind of make sure that this makes sense holistically and our plan makes sense, so that we can kind of build the projections around a plan that's possible. Because in that example, like, they might have been able to start the business for, a different way for $1 million instead of 3 million. And maybe they had 100,000 available for equity, but they didn't have the 300. So if we would have had a conversation earlier before they spent all this time building out their $3 million, we could try to help guide them in that process. So that SBA coaching program is something new that we've been offering. And that's been fun for me, just to try to figure out the puzzle for clients of like, how do we make this work? So that's one aspect of what we've been doing. And then specifically working on a lot of acquisition clients. So clients looking to acquire businesses will do there's a quality of earnings report is kind of a buzzword. And from my experience, when I was a SBA lender, most of our clients were smaller loans, and they would never pay $20,000-$30,000 for like a full quality of earnings report that's almost like an audit. And so we came out with what we call our quality of earnings sniff test, where I'm trying to get a high level view of the business that you're looking to buy, and just give you that sniff test and give you an idea of like, does the valuation make sense? How's the SBA lender, or how's the lender going to look at this? Does it cash flow? And try to look at it from kind of that perspective for, 10% of the price you might pay for your full quality of earnings report. So,
okay, so on that case, they would gather the data, put it into the template, and you would do a sniff test just to check that it's all.
Yeah. So typically in that process, those clients say they'll have like 3 years tax returns for the business. And so we'll take those, we'll actually input the data into a template that we have for them. And then we're looking at trends, year over year trends that might be concerning to a lender. We compare it to industry ratios. So if we say, hey, you're spending, 15% on repairs and maintenance, and the industry average is 25%, let's just say, and you say, oh, why are you spending so much less than the industry average? Are you not keeping your equipment up to par or something? And when I buy this business, am I going to end up having a bunch of broken equipment? So we'll look at things like that. And then I think ultimately we're trying to understand, how does this cash flow with the proposed loan? Does it look like it's going to cash flow? And what's that debt service coverage ratio look like? And if that's too low, the lender's not going to approve the loan. And so we can help guide them and say, well, you're not going to be able to pay, $3 million for this business, but it might cash flow at 2.6. And so you can kind of back into what number might work.
Okay. So you're a lot more than what is just off what you see on the wrapper, really. Okay, well, let's
Yeah.
see if we can
Yeah.
extend your skills a bit further then. I'm interested in roll-ups. That's mergers and acquisitions and roll-ups. Now, when you want to bunch a couple of things together, how could you help there in putting together some sort of a planning, forecasting tool for that?
Yeah, we do have a multi-unit business template that we kind of call our roll-up template. And I think it's it has been used by clients to kind of model out roll-ups at a high level. I do think, what I found is once you actually have a particular deal a business that you're particularly looking to acquire with specific information, then that roll-up template is a little too high level almost. And you might want to we have an acquisition template specifically that would just model that kind of one single acquisition at a higher level of detail. So I think once you have a target, that's probably the one to use. If you're kind of more hey, I'm looking for deals around this price point in this industry at these margins, and I want to see what this would look like, if I had several of them, and have some assumptions for economies of scale. If you pull 5 dental practices together, how do you improve the margins on that or whatever? I think that multi-unit template could be useful for that.
Well, I've built systems like that myself, but it's been a bit of a geek in my history. So yes, I've built those systems. But what I can give people a warning on right now is if you don't have the right calculation in there, you don't have the right logic in there, then that is going to cascade, and it's going to lead to the questions you were asking before. This doesn't look right. There's something wrong here. And then when you start to hand those assessments on or send them out to people, it's going to bring questions to their mind. And people that have questions in their mind don't support you. They don't buy what you're offering. So you've got to have these numbers right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's one thing I feel pretty confident in, just because our template and it's all kind of built on the same base structure, and we've sold so many of these over so many years now that it's early on, when every once in a while we'd find a mistake, a customer would have some strange use case and they'd be like, hey, this doesn't look right, and we look and yep, you're right, you found a very strange use case that the equation was wrong, and we fixed that in the base model. And so at this point, I do feel pretty confident that the base structure of our models have been stress tested by a lot of different folks. So I do think, even, if I were trying to build something from scratch, I'd be scared that I'd have a mistake in my balance sheet somewhere, and I'm sending that to investors or lenders and I've got a mistake. So yes, it's easy to do.
Which is the exact reason why you were telling a story before about the lender was coming back to you today, where you had a meeting to ask, how is this calculated? Because if you can't justify how it's calculated and explain to the relevant parties, then again, you lose confidence, or they lose confidence in you, and then it's over anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the reason that I was so excited with talking with you again, Adam, is that you've done this, and as you've just explained, you've done this over a period of time. You've stress tested these. These are not easy to put together. They're not easy to get right, and they're not easy to stress test. But you've been able to do this over a period of time and over a variety of industries. That's a huge confidence builder, really, that people can come to you, use your products, and not have to go and try and create them themselves. They've got something, a core that they can build upon themselves for their own. In my industry, in the roll-ups, you call it a buy box, for their own little buy box, their own little criteria.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's really why I was so excited about talking to you, because people go out there and they try and do this themselves, and it takes a lot of time to put together. Just to explain to people, this is not just a spreadsheet you're seeing. This spreadsheet has about 15 tabs at the bottom of it with all different scenarios. To put together just one of those sheets is going to take you days if you know what you're doing. But to put them all together and then put each one of those, say 15, how many are there, by the way?
Yeah, there's the income statement, cash flow, and balance sheet, all broken down annually and by month for 5 years. All of them are at least 5 years. And then, there's several input tabs. There's probably 5 or so input tabs with different, custom revenue models, custom expense models. You're kind of building out your initial balance sheet with your assets and liabilities and staffing. There's usually a staffing tab, so you can add, you want to add specific salaried positions and taxes and benefits. And you can even, some of the templates have like a scaling staff type of model. So if you say, hey, we just know we're going to hire more of this position every time we hit a new revenue benchmark. So for every extra 100,000 in monthly revenue, add a new customer service rep or something, and so you could kind of just automate that's kind of nice. So yeah.
I hear another Adam that I work with, Adam Coffey, talk about that scenario over and over and over again, that you've got to achieve these goals before you can employ someone else and keep going over and over again.
Sure.
So yes, that's brilliant. But what I was saying is this takes so much time and so much knowledge and skill to put together to be able to come to an organization like yours and just get something that you know works, that you can then go and tweak and make work for you, but then take it back to you and say, hey, did I screw up the whole thing? That's just brilliant. That I said at the top of this presentation, people are going to save you 6 figures in this session. That in itself explains why I said that. Because if you go out to an investor, you go out to a business partner and you get it wrong, well, there you go. How much have you lost with that? Yep. So yes, that's why I was so excited about catching up with you, because I could just see the potential there.
Yeah. Well, it's good to have somebody else excited about spreadsheets. we're excited about
boring, Adam.
We're excited about it, but it's it's good when others are too.
It's the potential that I see there in savings, and as I said, I've built this myself. Well, now I'm a little embarrassed to say it now that I've looked at yours, of course, because yours are better. But I appreciate how difficult it is, but more importantly, I appreciate the security of having something designed and tested over and over again. That's what's so important, really. Okay, so I'm pretty cocky here, Adam. I've built my own stuff. Can you go over and make it work better for me? Can I just email it to you and you fix it up and make it work? Is that a service?
Yeah, so, one of the it used to be. So we used to be willing to try that. What we found over time is that it kind of gets back to that we have stress tested our model. And so when someone kind of brings in their own model, it's like, it might look right. We think it's working, but we're not really sure. And really to know for sure, it would just take time of stress testing, and we'd have to really dig into all of the equations. And so what we've tended to say over time is that, we can take aspects of your model and use it as kind of a guide, but we're probably going to build it kind of from scratch into our model and then do the integration into our core model, just because, we know we can stand by that.
It really does. I expected the answer to be just a straight no, because that would be insane. Because you just don't know what they've done in there. And over the many years of consulting, I have seen what these finance managers have twisted and manipulated in their spreadsheets. It's a rabbit warren you don't want to go down, and you certainly don't want to trust.
Right. Yeah. We don't want to put our name on it if we haven't really done it. I wish there was a better answer to that. I'd love to be able to say, oh yeah, we can just make your template a little bit better, but that's what we typically say.
Let me ask the last big question of today, and that is AI. How do I get AI to give me all the numbers to plug into?
Yeah. I mean, AI is a question for us. I mean, even as we've been, when ChatGPT first came out, it was like, okay, well, how many weeks until they come out with a spreadsheet that just builds a model, that they can replace ours. And it's been we've now had AI for a while and it still hasn't. But here's how I use it, and our team uses this when we're building a model for somebody. We'll kind of do a quality control check after we put together a model. We'll look at industry ratios and we'll use AI to say, hey, what do you think the typical industry ratio gross profit margin should be for this business? How much do you think they should if you had to guess, how much would they spend on these different expenses? Like, what are the different expenses for this type of business, and what percentage of revenue would they spend? How much do you think this business could do in revenue in this town, and and explain it? And it really can do a great job of just kind of giving you some logic and backing to make sure that your projections make some sense. So we like to, we are taking often what the client tells us initially. We'll ask questions to the client. Hey, you're the expert. This is your business. What do you want to do? But then we will also kind of stress test it with industry data, and AI is great for that. And so we can say, hey, are you really sure you're going to have this? Because ChatGPT doesn't think your margins in this restaurant are going to be 40% net profit. Yeah, that's how we like to use it.
Well, thank you, Adam. That has just been brilliant. Really has. I know I've probably raved a bit too much, but as I said, I was excited about doing this podcast and giving people this information. Would you be able to give us, say, a 90-second, tell us everything, what people should do next, please?
Yeah. So you can go to projectionhub.com, and we can take a look at all of our different projection templates. We've got a library of templates that we mentioned there. And then, if you've got a model that you have in mind, that's something you want to build, or you want us to take a look at a deal you're working on, you can feel free to reach out to me directly. My email is just adam@projectionhub.com. So happy to answer any emails directly.
Well, thank you, Adam. We'll put all your details straight after this video as well, by the way. So all of that will be in there. But I just see you as not just a safety net, but as a guide to the future as well. There is so much risk in putting these together. If you've got someone that's already got something, then I just see that it's much better and safer to use what is already in operation and been proven. So thank you so much. That's fantastic. Yeah, look forward to chatting again soon.
Yeah, thank you, Craig.